Hello, Professor Dr. David Cook. For my final sermon for week 8, I will be talking about my title is Joseph, Ruler of the Land of Egypt. And my subject is God will promote you if you obey him. And I'm taking my text from Genesis 41, verses 38 through 57. And my first point is the Spirit of God will be seen by those around us when we obey. In verse 38, we see how Pharaoh asked a question. He said, "This is a man in whom is the Spirit of God." So we see how Pharaoh, not believing in Joseph's God, but he has his own God, but he is recognizing that there's something special in Joseph's. He's seeing the Spirit of God. A. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And we see that in verse 39, where Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is one as discerning and wise as you." So we understand because Joseph feared the Lord, he got great wisdom from and revelation from God. B. The unsaved will see there is something special on your life. And again, we see that on verse 38, where Pharaoh recognized. Pharaoh not being, had, like I said, his own gods, had his own beliefs, his own religion, but because he saw something special in Joseph's life, he saw the Spirit of God. He saw there was, it was witnessing to him. C. Joseph was faithful with the little, and the Lord gave him much more. We see that in verse 40. It says, "You shall be over my house." This is Pharaoh speaking. "And all my people shall be ruled according to your word. All in regard to the throne will I be greater than you." So we see there how the Lord was already promoting Joseph because his obedience, the Lord was opening up doors for him. Point 2, God made a footstool out of the enemies of Joseph. And we see that in verse 41. "And Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt.'" So Joseph, in front of his enemies, was being lifted by the Lord himself. And God made a footstool for him. Point A, Joseph had complete favor with Pharaoh. And we see that in verse 42. Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and he clothed him in garments of fine linen. So we see how the Lord put favor in front of Pharaoh, and not just Pharaoh, but throughout the land because of his obedience. B, the Lord rewarded Joseph in the open for everything he did in the secret. Verse 43, "And he had him bride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, 'Bow the knee.' So he set him over the land of Egypt." Now we understand that before before Joseph was rose to power, he was doing many things in the secret. When he was in prison, many things were being done that how he was glorifying God. See, the Lord's authority was set on Joseph. Verse 43, and he had him. So again, verse 43, where you see God's authority over Joseph being placed on him over everyone on that land. Point 3, Joseph just sought out God and everything was just added to him. Verse 45, "And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Saphnath, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, and the daughter of Potiphar. Priests of Joseph went out over all the land in Egypt. And we see that in verse 45 how God gave everything was just added onto him. The Lord blessed not only Joseph, but he gave him a lineage. And we see that in verse 50. And Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine. So 2 sons came, and there was a lineage that started through Joseph. The wisdom that was given to Joseph, he was able to save not just his house, but those around him. This was because of the obedience Joseph had. So because of verse 57, so all the countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was so great. So we see how our obedience can affect all those around us. We can have an impact in all those around us just because we obey God. And my last point is the storehouse never ran out for Joseph in verse 56. God kept his storehouse full, not just for him, but for all those around, because they were able to get from the obedience that Joseph had from God.